Welcome to GDs. And this is The Umbrella Academy, Season 3. Season starts with the Umbrella Academy siblings finding themselves in an altered timeline. And they learn that after their encounter with Reginald Hargreeves in 1963, things changed, and he adopted Ben, along with 6 different children, whom he trained into a superhero team, and now they are called the Sparrow Academy. The two sets of siblings, wanting to prove their dominance, face off with each other. But with the Sparrows being more coordinated, they had an upper hand, and the Umbrella siblings are overpowered, and they flee. Being forced to flee, they left their time-traveling briefcase at the Academy, which even the Sparrows didn't notice, and Grace, who is now a robotic maid for the Sparrows, keeps it in the basement, where a glowing sphere has appeared. The Umbrella siblings take shelter at Hotel Obsidian, where they try to come up with a plan, but reach no consensus. Vanya, taking an initiative, goes to meet with Marcus, who is the Sparrow's number 1. She proposes a deal to him, and tells him that they will return back if he gives them the briefcase, else she will hurt their public image. Marcus, knowing that it's a good deal, agrees for the same, not knowing that Ben and Faye, Sparrow's number 3, were keeping an eye on him. As Marcus returns back to the Academy, and looks for the briefcase, he finds a glowing sphere in the basement, and as he touches it, he is disintegrated. Grace, witnessing the same, starts worshipping the sphere. With Marcus missing, and the Sparrows seeing him last with Vanya, think that the Umbrella Academy siblings might have Marcus. Thus, in order to even the odds, they kidnap Luther when he was out for a run. Luther tells them that he knows nothing about Marcus. In addition, seeing them organized, he was quite impressed. As Luther tries to leave, Ben strongly suggests him to stay till they know where Marcus is. Back at the hotel, Lila visits Diego, and tells him that they have a son, and she has been taking care of him for past several years, and now, she wants him to take care of him, and she leaves Stan with him. Klaus, being back, wanted to see his birth mother, and was able to trick Five to join him in his endeavor. Allison goes looking for her daughter, but she finds that her daughter Claire doesn't exist in this timeline, and this spirals her into grief and rage. While Vanya, looking for Sissy, learns that Sissy died in 1989. Vanya, being in grief, gives in to what she has been feeling for a long time, and she gets her appearance changed, and comes out as Victor. Despite Victor's apprehensions, his family accepted him with open arms. We also get to see an older man, named Lester Pocket, as he packs his stuff, and sets out for somewhere, and we later find that he checks in the same hotel, where the Umbrella siblings are staying. Klaus finally reaches the community from which his mother belonged, and goes looking for her. While Five waited for him by the car. But Klaus was not able to find her mother, and learns that she died before she could give birth, and with the community chasing him, he runs to get away. Meanwhile, Five, waiting for him by the car, sees a bunch of animals disappearing, and it was because of an energy burst from the sphere. Seeing the same, he starts doing some calculations, and with Klaus reaching there, they get away. But with his calculations, and learning about Klaus's mother, he was able to determine that they might have created a grandfather paradox. While back in the city, Lila attempts to leave the city, but discovers that her briefcase no longer works. Lila, knowing that the Umbrella sibling had another briefcase, mimics Faye's powers, and is able to locate and steal their briefcase from the Sparrow Academy. But she finds that even that briefcase was not working. On the other hand, Diego and Stan start to bond with each other, as they accidentally end up fighting Sparrow's number 4, Alfonso, and their number 6, Jamie. Allison and Victor, hoping to get the briefcase from Marcus, head to the meeting, but Marcus was a no-show. Allison was quite frustrated, as she desperately wants to return back to her timeline, in order to reunite with her daughter Claire. At the Sparrow house, Sloane, their number 5, forms a connection with Luther, but Luther realizes that she might be doing so in order to gather information about his siblings. Sloane tells Luther that though she was tasked initially by Ben to do so, but knowing him, she genuinely likes him. With the Sparrows seeing that Luther's siblings came for the meeting, they think that they might not be responsible for Marcus disappearing. Thus they allow Luther to leave. As Luther leaves, Sloane secretly invites him to her room, and forming a connection, they end up getting intimate. While the sphere continues to send shockwaves, causing more objects, humans, and animals to disappear. With Five and Klaus returning back, they look for information on their mothers, and they learn that all their mothers died before they were born. 5 then explains to his siblings the grandfather paradox which they have created, and how dangerous it could be. Klaus wants to find the person who is responsible for their mother's death. His siblings think that it was their adoptive father Reginald, as he was the only one who knew about their mothers. Allison, on the other hand, was more interested in getting the time-traveling briefcase back, so that they could leave from this timeline. With no one worried about the paradox, 5 leaves to seek help from Lila, while Luther also returns to the hotel, and joins his siblings. 5 and Lila, knowing what's at stake, reluctantly team up to solve the time paradox. Lila reveals to him that she got their time-traveling briefcase also, but both briefcases are not working, and the probability of 2 time-traveling briefcases failing at the same time were quite low. Working together, they are able to get one of the briefcase working, which provides them enough power to get to the commission. As they reach the commission, they find that the commission is in ruins, and 5 believes it's because of the paradox. Nevertheless, they look for information on how to end the paradox, and it leads them to the founder's room. Lila is not granted access, but as 5 steps up, the room unlocks, and inside the room, there was an old man, lying on some kind of a life support system. As they get closer to him, they find that the founder is an elderly future version of 5, who has a missing arm and a cryptic tattoo. Younger 5, upset with his older self, wants to know on how he can stop the paradox. The older 5 tells him that he should not try to save the world, but before he could tell him more, the falling commission causes his life support to stop, and he dies. As Lila and 5 leave from the commission, younger 5 cuts out the tattoo which the older 5 had on his chest. Back in the present, Allison, desperate to go back, goes with Victor to negotiate with the Sparrows for the briefcase. At the negotiation, Allison falsely claims that they have Marcus, with the Sparrows falsely claiming that they have the briefcase. And they both agree for an exchange later. While Klaus, wanting to know if it was their father who killed their biological mother, sneaks into the Sparrow Academy and confronts his father. But Reginald tells him that he had nothing to do with their mother's death. With this version of Reginald being a bit soft, he also bonds with him. Later, Klaus learns that the Sparrows are keeping him drugged, and this is what made him a bit docile. But before Klaus left, he taught his father on how to hide the pills without swallowing them. The Sparrows, looking for the briefcase, finally discover the glowing sphere, which we now know is the kugelblitz, and has been destroying the world. Seeing the same, and learning from Grace that it is what consumed Marcus, they know that the Umbrella siblings don't have him. Thus, they go to confront them in the hotel. At the hotel, as they fight with the Umbrella siblings, they were able to overpower them. It is when Lester arrives, and he unleashes a burst of energy, and was able to save them. But it resulted in the death of Alfonso and Jamie, 2 of the Sparrow siblings. While the remaining get away, but they left Sloane behind. Victor recognizes Lester to be Harlan, Sissy's son, whom she saved in 1963. He learns from him that since the time he got back, he could feel a connection, and thus he came looking for him. He also tells him that he missed him a lot after he left in 1963. In addition, because of him being special, he and his mother lived a difficult life, needing to move constantly. And when his mother died, he had a violent outburst of power, and ever since, he has been living away from people. On the other hand, with Sloane being captured, Allison uses her power on her, wanting to know if she knows about the briefcase, despite Luther objecting to it. But a desperate Allison was not willing to back down, and she ultimately learned that Sloane does not know where the briefcase is. Lila and 5 also return back to the present, with the help of the briefcase, which got destroyed after this jump. 5 tells his siblings that the kugelblitz will soon collapse all of the existence. Allison, seeing the briefcase, realizes that there is no way back for her now. And this results in her growing more and more angry. Allison, in order to win out some of his anger, goes along with Diego to pick a fight in a bar known for its racist clientele. While Klaus babysits Stan in the hotel. Being in the hotel, Klaus and Stan accidentally get into a luxury suite called the White Buffalo. While in the suite, Stan starts fiddling with things, and he accidentally kills Klaus with a spear gun. Luther, on the other hand, nurses Sloane. Later, Luther, along with Victor, returns Sloane to the Sparrows as a gesture of peace, wanting to avoid any further confrontation. But Ben demands that in order for peace to stand, they will also need to hand over Harlan, as he was the one who killed their siblings. At the hotel, Harlan finds the file on the Umbrella Academy's dead mothers, and seeing the same, he reveals to Victor that he is the one who caused all their mother's death. He tells him that when his mother Sissy died, he had an outburst, and his energy wanted to connect with him, but since at that time, he was in her mother's womb, his outburst resulted in all their mothers dying. Harlan wanted to come clean with his siblings, but Victor stops him and tells him that he will let them know. But he never planned to do so, as he knows that they will blame him, and Victor feels that it was him who failed Harlan. Meanwhile, Klaus awakens in the afterlife, where a person on the bike reveals to him that he has died over 50 times, but he always returns to life because he is immortal. It is when he realizes that all the close death experiences he thought he had were actually when he died, and he just couldn't remember them. With this revelation, he also remembered his childhood, when his father experimented on him. He then connects with his dead mother, and she tells him not to mourn her, instead she asks him to seek a sense of purpose. Diego, finding out that Stan accidentally killed Klaus, was quite angry, but instead of lashing out, he comforts him, and as he helps him move Klaus's body, he returns back from the afterlife. Lila, seeing Diego being a good father, gets back in a relationship with him. She also comes clean to him, and tells him that Stan is not their son, but instead the son of her close friend, for whom she was babysitting. And she played this prank on him, in order to know what kind of father he would be. And then she reveals to him that she is actually pregnant with his child. Allison, on the other hand, being in pain of losing her family, tries to be with Luther, but Luther, being in love with Sloane, was not ready. And a desperate Allison uses her powers on him. But as Luther gets free, he was horrified, and he leaves the hotel and goes to be with Sloane. The rest of the siblings, knowing Kugelblitz to be a bigger problem, know that they will have to work with the Sparrows, thus they agree to hand over Harlan to them. Victor, feeling guilty about the trauma his powers have caused Harlan, was not willing to do so. And with the help of Allison, he sneaks Harlan out of the hotel, hoping that he would be able to take back his powers, and then he won't be any threat to the Sparrows, and they might leave him be. After a lot of attempts, Victor was finally able to take away all of Harlan's power. As Victor slept in order to regain his strength, Harlan apologizes to Allison for being responsible for their mother's death, thinking she already knew. But Allison, learning the same, blamed him for everything, for her losing her family, as well as their current situation, and in anger, she kills him, and delivers his body to the Sparrows. Back at the hotel, with Stan missing, Diego and Lila look for him in the Buffalo suite. Being there, they find a secret door leading to somewhere, and thinking Stan might have gone in, they also go to the other side. As they reach the other side, they find themselves in a replica of the hotel, having a bell at the reception, warning them not to ring. But they were not able to stop, and they ring the bell anyways, and it causes a guardian to attack them. In the attack, Diego loses 2 of his fingers, and they barely made it back, only to find Stan in the Buffalo suite, just moments before he is consumed by Kugelblitz. Klaus, on the other hand, recognizes Five's future tattoo as belonging to a biker gang, the Mothers of Agony, who used to sell him drugs. Getting to know the same, Five goes to the gang's club. Being there, he was surprised to find that the tattoos are being done by a biker Pogo. But Pogo was not interested in talking with him, and leaves. Five, not ready to give up, follows him, and as he reaches his trailer, Pogo agrees to entertain him. Hearing Five out, Pogo tells him that he used to be a trainer for the Sparrows, but in 2014, he had a disagreement with Reginald over the Sparrows training. As a result, Reginald asked him to leave, but before leaving, he told the Sparrows to keep Reginald on pills, so that he remains docile. He also tells him about Reginald's obsession with a project called Project Oblivion, and the tattoos he has are related to that only, and although the tattoo he has is his work, but he has not done any such tattoo so far. It is when Five tells him to draw the same tattoo on his chest. Back at the Sparrows, Luther, spending time with Sloane, shares with her details of his time on Moon. This is when we see that a part of the moon was not accessible to him, and that part of the moon had the body of Reginald's wife Abigail. With Luther being with Sloane, and the Sparrows being down in number, Ben asks Luther to join the Sparrows, and Luther was happy doing so. Klaus returns to see his father, as he was able to form a bond with him earlier, and he wanted to know that why the Reginald in the original timeline killed him repeatedly. To figure this out, Reginald, being off his pills, starts to experiment on him, by electrocuting him to death, and killing him repeatedly. He then tells him, that him as well as his other self, is doing so, in order to train him, so that he is able to reanimate more quickly. He then takes Klaus to a graveyard, so that he could confront his fears. Klaus, being pushed, overcomes his fears, and gains control over his powers. At the Sparrow Academy, with Harlan being dead, they all start to work together, to stop the kugelblitz. Victor is not happy with Allison, but Allison was remorseless about murdering Harlan. In addition, she also blamed Victor for their current situation. But with kugelblitz being the priority, Lila, Sloane, Christopher, and Victor combine their powers, in order to trap the kugelblitz in Christopher. Grace, seeing them do so, attacks them, but 5 stops her, and kills her. With Grace gone, they were able to trap the kugelblitz in Christopher, and were quite happy. The group celebrates saving the world, while Luther proposes to Sloane, and she accepts. 5 comforts a grieving Victor, and tells him that saving Harlan would not have fixed their past failures. Later we see that Christopher was not able to contain kugelblitz, and it explodes suddenly, reopening the kugelblitz. In addition, it also resulted in Faye being disintegrated. We are then taken back to 1918, when Reginald Hargreeves found a mysterious portal, and began construction of the Hotel Obsidian. And at its grand opening, he sends several soldiers down the secret tunnel, but they are all slaughtered. In the present, with the world almost disintegrated, the siblings take shelter at the hotel, where Luther and Sloane announce their wedding. Reginald and Klaus also arrive at the hotel, but none of the siblings were interested to hear on what he had to say. Luther asks Victor to be his best man, and leaves a bitter Ben out of his bachelor party. Sloane calls Ben out for his attitude, and tells him to loosen up. While Klaus tries to coach his father to connect better with his children. Reginald, incorporating Klaus's advice, delivers a moving speech at the wedding reception. Victor also tries to reconcile with Allison, but Allison, blaming her for everything, refuses to forgive him. Ben finally lets loose, and goes on a drinking spree, and bonds with Klaus. After the wedding reception, the group, minus Allison, sits drunkenly in the courtyard, looking at the horizon, as the kugelblitz consumes the entire world. Luther tells them that he finally has the family that he has always dreamed of. As a drunkenly 5 returns back to his room, he overhears Reginald making a deal with someone. In the morning, a hungover 5 tries to recall who was making a deal with Reginald the previous night, but is not able to do so. While Allison apologizes to Luther and Victor for her actions. But both suspected that she is manipulating them, and might have an agenda. Later Reginald calls for a meeting, and explains to everyone that he built the Hotel Obsidian around a portal to the universe's reset button, and by pressing the same, they could save the world. But the button requires 7 people to pass through the secret tunnel, and ring 7 bells, which are protected by guardians. Hearing him out, they all debated on what to do, and decided to vote. Allison, Lila, Klaus, and Ben agreed to the plan, but Diego, Victor, Luther, Sloane, and 5 outvote them, and they decided not to go. Reginald, in order to force their hand, murders Luther, and blames it on the Guardian, hoping to motivate the group to change their vote. 5, remembering that it might have been Allison, with whom Reginald made a deal, believes that she might be responsible for his death. But nevertheless, with Luther gone, and Sloane seeking revenge, they decided to cross over. The group goes through the tunnel, and into the Hotel Oblivion, as the kugelblitz consumes the hotel. Klaus, being the last one, was pushed back by Reginald, and he tells him that he is too much of a liability. Klaus, in order to ensure that he survives kugelblitz, jumps on the horns of the white buffalo, which results in him dying, and going to afterlife, instead of being obliterated. At Hotel Oblivion, 5 warns Victor of Allison's actions. And they split up in pairs, looking for the Guardians. With the group being spread out, Reginald summons the Guardians by pushing the bell, and the Guardians go after them. The group, with great efforts, is able to kill 2 of the Guardians, and together they also knock out the 3rd, but in the process 5 loses his arm. In the afterlife, Luther convinces Klaus to return to the living, and after being pushed by him, Klaus joins his siblings in the living world. In addition, he was also able to get Luther with him for some time, and they expose Reginald. Allison admits to Victor that she did make a deal with Reginald, but had no idea that their brothers would die. With Reginald being exposed, Luther gets time to properly say goodbye to Sloane. 5 sees the knocked out guardian, regaining strength. Thus had no choice, but to guide his family, to stand on the 7 star symbols, present on the lobby floor. Reginald stops Allison from stepping on the stars, while 5 goes and stands on the final star. With them being on the stars, an energy is released, which kills the guardian. While Reginald starts adjusting some combinations, but it seemed to be draining life out from everyone. And Reginald tells Allison that their life force is what is powering the machine. Allison, not being able to see her siblings lose their life, kills Reginald, and realizes that he was not human. With her sibling released, a button also pops up, despite what Reginald was doing, being stopped midway. 5 asks her not to press it, but Allison, hoping it will set things right, presses the button. With the button being pressed, we see a rebuilt universe, with Allison returning to her home, where she reunites with Claire, as well as Ray. While 5, Ben, Victor, Diego, Klaus and Lila come up in an elevator, and they are where the hotel used to be, which is now a memorial park, and Reginald Hargreeves donated it in 1989. Luther also comes back, and he is no longer an ape man. In addition, 5's arm and Diego's fingers are also restored. Luther, not being able to find Sloane, threatens 5, wanting to know where she is. But 5, not knowing anything, tries to jump. It is when they realize that none of them have any powers now. Not knowing what it means, they all go on their separate ways, with only Diego and Lila sticking together. And as the season ends, we get to see that the city is now dominated with Hargreeves' ventures, and Reginald looks over the city, with his wife Abigail standing beside him. And in a final post-credit scene, we get to see Ben, sometimes later, suited up, and riding in a subway, to an unknown destination. Thanks for watching. And if you liked it, please subscribe.